Welcome to our deep dive today into the world of ancient Chinese thought.
Yeah.
Um, we're going to be talking about legalism, Taoism, and Confucianism,
Mhm.
the arrival of Buddhism, and its impact on Chinese society. I'm really excited. We've got some amazing sources lined up for this one.
Yeah, it's really quite fascinating how these different philosophies, they all kind of grappled with the same basic questions, like what is human nature? What's the best way to govern people? And how can we build a harmonious society?
Yeah,
Um,
that's what I love about it. Like they're all looking at the same problem,
yeah,
but through very different lenses.
yeah,
Um, Before we kind of jump into the specifics of each philosophy,
yeah,
I keep coming across this idea of Tianxia, which I guess
yeah,
is kind of like a central
yeah.
principle to Chinese thought. Can you maybe talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. Yeah. So Tianxia basically means all under heaven. And it reflects this idea
Hmm.
of a unified China under a strong central authority. But it's more than just like political control. It's about cosmic order, a vision of society where everything is in its rightful place.
Okay, so it's not so much about just like who's in charge,
Yeah.
but the balance of everything, like fitting together in the right way,
Yeah.
with the emperor at the center, holding it all together.
Exactly. And this concept of Tianxia really shapes how these different philosophies approach the question of, how to govern. So, for example, legalism, which became very influential during the Qin dynasty, really embraces this idea of strong centralized authority.
Okay, so that makes sense. If
Mhm.
you truly believe that people are kind of selfish
Mm.
and prone to chaos,
Mm.
you probably want
Right.
a strong leader to keep everyone in check.
Yeah, exactly. It's all about control. Order through strict laws, harsh punishments. You can kind of think of it like
Yeah.
a finely tuned machine,
Right.
where everything needs to be working perfectly. And any deviation is met with like severe consequences.
It sounds a little intense. Like there isn't much room for like individual expression or dissent
Yeah.
in that system.
Well, yeah, I mean, legalism is not about encouraging debate or fostering creativity.
Right.
It's about maintaining stability.
And preventing chaos.
Okay, so it seems like legalism is kind of
Yeah.
the most direct application of Tianxia,
Yeah.
having that strong authority at the top to ensure order and unity.
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely.
It was, now let's maybe look at a stark contrast
Hmm.
to legalism,
Mm,
which is Taoism.
okay.
Yeah.
Taoism.
Yeah.
This is the one with yin and yang, the
Yeah.
emphasis on balance,
Yeah.
harmony with nature.
Exactly.
It feels a lot more free-flowing
Yeah.
than legalism.
Yeah. Yeah. And so Taoism, it's often attributed to this guy Lao Tzu
Hmm.
and articulated in this book called the Tao Te Ching, encourages us to kind of live in accordance with the Tao,
Yeah.
which is like this natural order of the universe.
Okay.
It's about understanding the interconnectedness of everything
Mhm.
and embracing the ebb and flow of life.
Hmm.
So instead of
Yeah.
imposing rules and regulations, it's more of a
Found us on.
like a hands-off approach,
Yeah.
letting things unfold naturally.
Exactly. Think of it like a gardener tending to their plants.
Right. Okay.
They don't try to force them to grow in a certain way. They
Yep.
nurture the conditions so that the plants can thrive naturally.
Okay, that's a really
Yeah.
different approach to leadership than the legalist way. So
Mm.
instead of ruling with like an iron fist, it's more
Input.
about guidance and understanding the natural
Yeah.
rhythms of life.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And this difference in approach comes from a very fundamental difference in how they see people.
Right.
So while legalism sees humans as inherently selfish,
Right.
Taoism believes in our inherent goodness
Okay.
and suggests that it's
Fantastic.
societal structures and power struggles that actually corrupt us.
So it's more about cultivating inner harmony and letting that flow outwards
Right.
rather than imposing order
Yeah.
from above.
Yeah, exactly. There's this one of my favorite quotes from the Tao Te Ching says, "He who conquers others is strong. He who conquers himself is mighty." Right. So it speaks to the power of self-cultivation,
Yeah.
mastering your own impulses rather than seeking to dominate others.
That's beautiful. Okay, so we have the strict order of legalism,
Right.
the flowing harmony of Taoism.
Yeah.
Where does Confucianism
Ah.
kind of fall into this whole spectrum?
Yeah, that's a great question. So Confucianism is based on the teachings of this guy, Confuci, better known as Confucius. And it kind of offers a blend of structure and individual responsibility. It's kind of like a middle ground between
Legalism and Taoism.
Yeah,
Okay, go.
exactly. So it's not just about strict laws, but also about cultivating virtue,
Okay.
ethical behavior.
So it's not just the rules,
Yeah,
but it's how you act.
exactly. Confucius believed that. A harmonious society is built on a foundation of personal virtue
Hmm.
and right conduct. So he outlined 5 key relationships. ruler and subject, parent and child, husband and wife, older and younger siblings, and friend and friend.
Each with its own set of duties and obligations,
Yeah.
it sounds like. A framework for creating harmony
Uh,
through mutual respect and understanding, your place in the world, your place in society.
exactly. And while Confucianism values a strong and ordered society, it emphasizes achieving this through education, moral persuasion, rather than harsh punishment.
So you inspire people to be their best rather than force them to comply.
Exactly.
It's very
yeah.
different from legalism in his view of human nature. It sounds much more optimistic.
Yeah, absolutely. So Confucius believed that humans are inherently good,
Yeah.
capable of learning and self-improvement, and he placed a huge emphasis on education as the path to cultivating virtue and wisdom.
It's not just knowledge is power. It's like the right kind of knowledge.
Exactly. It's knowing how to live a good life,
Right.
how to relate to others,
Yeah.
how to build a harmonious society. And this emphasis on education and ethical conduct has had a profound impact on Chinese culture for centuries.
Wow. Okay, so we've got these three powerful philosophies, each with its own unique perspective. But before we go too much deeper into how they all interact,
Yeah.
I want to touch on the arrival of Buddhism in China, because it seems to have introduced a whole new
Yeah.
set of ideas and practices.
Yeah.
I'm especially interested in like the core beliefs of Buddhism and
Yeah.
how those might have resonated with the Chinese people at the time.
Yeah. So Buddhism, which originated in India,
Right.
really found fertile ground in China.
Okay.
And at its heart, it's about understanding and overcoming suffering. It's not about like escaping from the world. It's about
Yeah.
changing how you relate to your experience.
Instead of seeing suffering as something
Yeah,
to avoid, it's acknowledging that it's a part of life.
exactly. So the Buddha taught that suffering comes from our attachments, our desires, our clinging to things that are impermanent.
So instead of trying to push those feelings away, it's more about understanding them,
Yeah,
figuring out where they come from,
yeah,
and finding ways to deal with them.
precisely. And Buddhism provides a path to do that through things like meditation, mindfulness,
Yeah.
ethical conduct.
It seems like that focus on inner transformation,
Mm-hmm.
finding peace, even amidst the challenges of life, would have really resonated with people,
Yeah.
especially in a society that had
Yeah.
experienced so much change and upheaval.
Yeah, absolutely. Buddhism offered hope
Yeah.
and resilience, a roadmap
Yeah.
for inner growth and spiritual awakening.
Wow. Okay, so in this
Mm-hmm.
first part of our deep dive, we've covered quite a bit. We've talked about the core ideas of legalism, Taoism, Confucianism,
Right.
and Buddhism,
Mm.
and how those philosophies each offer a
Yeah.
different perspective
Yeah.
on how to live a good life and create a harmonious society. In our next segment, I want to look at how these philosophies interacted, influenced each other,
Yeah.
shaped the course of Chinese history and Chinese thought. So stay with us.
Yeah, it's really a rich tapestry of ideas that
Yeah.
still resonates today.
So it's amazing to think about all of these different philosophies kind of like existing together in China. Sometimes they would complement each other. Sometimes they would clash. It's not like people had to just pick one and follow that one.
No, not at all. I mean, Chinese thought has always been really fluid. You can think of it almost like a marketplace of ideas.
Okay.
So, people could draw wisdom from multiple sources, depending on the situation. Or even the time of day.
So it was less about choosing a side and more about
Yeah.
picking the right tool for the job.
Yeah.
And so that could be like a legalist principle for keeping order,
Yeah.
a Taoist insight for finding balance, or a Confucian ideal for improving relationships.
Exactly. Yeah. And we can't forget Buddhism,
Right.
which you added kind of a spiritual element
Yeah.
to the mix.
Yeah. It seems like Buddhism offered a way to find
Mm.
inner peace in a really complex world.
Yeah, for sure. And this is what's so interesting about Chinese thought. This kind of dynamic tension between all these competing ideas, that's what gives it its depth.
Yeah, it's like a conversation that's been going on for centuries, each philosophy adding to the conversation.
Right.
But I'm wondering, how did this actually play out in terms of governing China?
Well, even though there were periods where China was fragmented, the idea of Tianxia, this idea of unified China under one strong central authority, that was always there. And rulers would often use these different philosophies to justify their actions, consolidate their power.
Okay, so even when the empire was divided,
Right.
there was still this idea that China should be one.
Exactly. And that belief was often used as a way to bring the country back together. So rulers would say, I'm the one to restore the natural order.
Yeah.
Bring harmony back to Tianxia.
So they would kind of adapt to the situation, use the philosophy that fit their needs. So if they needed to, crack down, restore order, they might lean on legalism, strict laws and punishments.
A smart ruler would also know that. You can't just rule through fear and punishment.
Right.
You need to win over the hearts and minds of your people. You need to cultivate loyalty and virtue.
And that's where Confucianism would come in.
Exactly.
With a focus on ethical leadership and social harmony.
Yes. So a ruler who embodied those Confucian ideals would inspire respect and obedience, not by force, but through moral authority, commitment to the well-being of their people.
It's amazing to think about how rulers kind of navigated this.
Yeah.
Complex philosophical world, drawing on different ideas to meet different challenges. It's like they were conducting an orchestra of ideas.
That's a great way to put it, yeah. And this interplay between philosophies, it wasn't just limited to politics. It had an influence on Chinese art, literature, even daily life.
So these weren't just abstract concepts. They were really woven into the fabric of society.
Exactly. And this dynamic interplay, this willingness to embrace different perspectives, that's what makes Chinese thought so enduring, relevant even today.
Yeah, it's like a tapestry, woven from different threads, each philosophy bringing its own unique color and texture to the whole.
Exactly. And so, as we move into the last part of our deep dive, I think it's worth thinking about how these ancient ideas can still speak to us today. What insights can they offer for the challenges we face in the modern world?
Yeah, that's what I'm most excited to talk about, because it's one thing to understand these philosophies in their historical context, but it's a whole other thing to see how they might apply to our lives, to the issues we deal with in the world today. It's
kind of mind-blowing to think about how these philosophies have not only shaped China, but have also influenced thinking all over the world, like their wisdom has traveled across time and space, touched countless lives.
Yeah, and that really speaks to their enduring power. These ideas go beyond any one culture or country, and they really force us to think about, ethics, leadership, what it means to be human.
And I think what's so interesting is it's not just about their historical influence. It's like they also offer practical guidance for how to live in the world today.
Absolutely. Take Taoism, for example, in a world that's constantly telling us to. Strive for more, achieve more, buy more. Taoism reminds us to, slow down, appreciate the simple things. Reconnect with nature, find some inner peace in the middle of all the chaos. Find joy in the present moment instead of always chasing the next big thing.
Exactly. It's about shifting our focus from, achievements to inner contentment.
Right.
Finding a way to just be.
And what about Confucianism? What can we learn from that?
Well, Confucianism reminds us how important it is to build strong ethical relationships based on respect, empathy, and a sense of shared responsibility.
Like a blueprint for a more harmonious society. Starting with how we interact with each other. Recognizing that, what we do affects the people around us.
Exactly. It really encourages us to think about our roles in society, our responsibilities in our families, communities, even the wider world.
And it seems like it puts a big emphasis on education, not just for personal success, but for cultivating people who will contribute to a better world.
Exactly. It's about nurturing the mind and the heart. Realizing that, knowledge without compassion can be just as dangerous as ignorance.
Okay. And then Buddhism. With its insights into the nature of suffering. Even more relevant today in a world that's often full of so much anxiety and uncertainty.
For sure. Buddhism gives us tools to face the challenges of life. With resilience, compassion, and wisdom. It reminds us that suffering is a part of life. But we don't have to let it control us.
It's not about pretending that pain doesn't exist. It's about understanding it and finding ways to cope with it.
Exactly. It's about finding that inner peace, even when things are tough.
So as we wrap up our deep dive, what's the main takeaway for our listeners?
Well, these philosophies, they offer so much wisdom. It's wisdom that goes beyond time and place. They're like different lenses to help us see our problems, make decisions, and live a more meaningful life.
So it's like they're different paths up the same mountain. Each one has its own unique perspective, but they're all leading towards a better understanding of ourselves and the world.
Exactly. And what's great is we can draw inspiration from all of them, see what resonates with us, and kind of create our own blend of wisdom.
So instead of thinking of them as like rigid rules,
Yeah.
we can see them as sources of inspiration, guidance for our own journey.
Absolutely. And I really encourage everyone listening
Yeah.
to dive deeper into these philosophies.
Yeah.
Explore them. See what you discover. You might just find a teaching, a
Mm.
practice that really speaks to you and helps you live a more purposeful and fulfilling life.
What an amazing exploration, it feels like. We've only just begun to explore the world of ancient Chinese thought, but it's definitely made me want to learn more. And we hope you'll join us on that journey. Thanks for listening.